Chair now calls C.J. Grisham. We show you registered as C.J. Grisham, representing yourself and Open Carry Texas, testifying in favor of the bill. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Please proceed.
Thank you. My name is C.J. Grisham, here representing myself, and on behalf of our members of Open Carry Texas, I'm the president and founder of the organization. We are a Second Amendment civil rights organization here in Texas with a focus on First, Second, and Fourth Amendment rights because they're all intertwined. We support this bill for several reasons. One is I think history has shown time and time again, and the testimony here has already shown that all gun-free zones do is create defenseless victims. And so any bill that's going to allow people to defend themselves is a bill that we are going to support and that we're going to endorse. The presence of a gun is only intimidating to people who are ignorant about guns and those that carry them. I'm carrying a gun right now. I don't see people running out of the street or refusing to testify. It's not intimidating because it's just sitting in my holster. A gun is just used in self-defense when we're talking about a poll worker, and if these people truly are under attack, then they have a right to defend themselves, and if necessary or if they have to, they can defend others. This idea that this bill in any way creates a sort of police force in the hands of an election worker is laughable at best, but really intellectually dishonest, because that's not what this bill does. This bill doesn't say you have to defend anybody out there or you got to go out there and look for guns. What it says is you can carry in defense of yourself, and if you're able to, in defense of others. Additionally, the bill requires that an election worker not only be an election worker, or poll judge, excuse me, but also have a license to carry. What does that mean? That means that this individual who would have a gun at a poll place is much more safe with that firearm than any law enforcement officer, because those who carry a license to carry are 6 times less likely to be convicted of any criminal activity than the police force. It's a 1.9% conviction rate among law enforcement. It's a 0.6% conviction rate among LTC. We're talking about misdemeanors, felonies, pretty much everything. So you're talking about the safest element of society, LTC holders, and you're allowing one person who has been entrusted with the idea of election integrity, which is perhaps the most important tool that we have as citizens, because that affects every other right that we have. Those that we vote for or against other rights and liberties and can infringe upon those. So we ask the committee favorably report the bill out of the committee into the House. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Members, any questions? Chairman Canales.
So thank you for your testimony. So I'm a staunch gun supporter, large gun collection myself. So listen to what I'm going to tell you, because I'm not talking about what you're talking about. I want to mention or discuss the comment that you made, and just for the sake of discussion.
Sure.
You said all gun-free zones create
defenseless victims.
Okay. So I should be able to carry a gun in a prison?
In a prison, you don't have any rights.
No, that's not what I'm asking you. Should I be able to carry a gun in a prison?
You have been deprived of all your rights in a prison. That's not a gun-free though. That's a jail. That's a red herring that you're throwing out there. I mean, that's like asking if I should be able to have a nuclear weapon in my pocket.
Members, any other questions?
As a visitor?
Thank you, sir.
Hello.
Chair now calls C.J. Grisham. We have you registered as C.J. Grisham, representing yourself and Open Carry Texas, testifying against the bill. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you. C.J. Grisham, on behalf of myself and Open Carry Texas, testifying against this bill. We also, as we said earlier in testimony, the problem that we have here is not a gun problem. It's a fact that if you're a prohibited person, what are you doing? If you're a danger to society, what are you doing in society? What we're doing here is we're adding another ban on an item that has absolutely nothing to do with what happened in El Paso and any shooting, whether it's a single shooting or a mass shooting, it doesn't matter. What next? Are we going to ban pistol grips? Are we going to ban flashlights? Are we going to ban flash suppressors? Are we going to ban slings? Or, you know, where does it end on parts of a firearm? It's a magazine. It can't hurt anybody unless you throw it at them at a high rate of speed and it hits them in a specific spot in the head maybe. We just disagree with the fact of, because here's the thing, even with this bill in line, that wouldn't have stopped the shooter that the bill author mentioned in his preface, because he would have bought those magazines and then later been prosecuted because he bought them illegally, unless you've got a registry. Now, if you've got a registry and you do a background check, then they would have known he bought these magazines illegally because he was a prohibited person. But if he's a prohibited person, where'd he get the gun? That's the problem, not the magazine. So this idea that, you know, maybe if we just start banning little things here and there, why not the spring in the magazine? It can just go on and on. We just, Open Carry Texas is absolutely opposed to creating more of these bans that are not going to solve a single problem at all. This would not have solved that shooting. Did he buy a lot of magazines? I have more than 60 magazines. I haven't shot up any schools. I've got a whole bunch of magazines. Probably, literally a couple hundred, probably, as many guns as I have, because I got to have different calibers and stuff. But that's not the problem. And even under this bill, let's say this bill is law right now, he goes and he buys these magazines online or at Academy or wherever. He still knowingly did that. But did that stop him from going out and shooting the school? No, not at all. He still is able to buy the magazines. Whereas the gun is where the background check comes in unless you do it illegally. So the bill doesn't even work unless you've got some sort of registry for buying magazines or some kind of background check. And so it might feel good. It might sound good. You know, it might make people think that we're doing something to solve a problem when we're not. But this bill is superfluous, and we oppose it.
Vice Chair Johnson.
Thank you, sir. Sir, you said something. You said this bill probably wouldn't have stopped the shooting.
Let me change that to definitely.
Definitely wouldn't have stopped the shooting, because you
Correct.
know that. Because you know that. Because at the end of the day, but you carrying a gun right now definitely is going to protect me if a gunman comes in. You're definitely going to protect
No, not
me.
at all.
So you're definitely going to protect yourself. You're definitely, because you know better, because you have a gun. But you can tell me, and this is the thing that bothers me about this whole, because I think this is a great bill that we can all get behind, because number one, you're misrepresenting what the bill is. It's not banning pistol grips. It's not banning springs. It's not banning.
Well, banning someone
What it
purchasing them.
basically says is that if you are of legal age to buy a gun, then you can buy a magazine. If you are not of a legal age to buy a gun, then you should not buy a magazine. We shouldn't send a 10-year-old into the store and allow a 10-year-old to buy a box full of bullets, because just like you said, he doesn't have a gun. So why would we allow a 10-year-old to buy bullets? Why would we allow anyone who is not of age to buy weaponry that can kill people? Not maybe, not probably, but definitely. Why would we allow? And so the bill itself doesn't do any of the things that you just said, that the other lady just said, that simply says we're trying to create a registry. Nothing in here says this is a registry. Nothing in here says that we're trying to track people's information. Nothing. It just simply says, and I think this is a great opportunity for us to finally get on the same page when it comes to guns and killings and all these other things. We want to agree to disagree that it's a mental health issue versus a gun issue. So be it. We can agree to disagree. But please stop saying that this bill is something that it is not. That is the problem in this state, because wrong information gets out there based on someone's interpretation of what the author just simply laid out. This guy was 17. He bought 30 magazines before the age of 18. This bill just simply says if you can't buy a gun, that means you can't buy a magazine. Doesn't say anything else about registry, doesn't say anything else about some boogeyman in the dark is going to start taking all of your guns if we allow this bill to pass. It just simply aligns the bill properly to say, look, guns are a Texas way of life. And if you want to buy it, you can buy a gun, and based on your belief, you can buy as many bullets and as many magazines as you want. So be it.
And Mr. Chair, respectfully, you're right. I would like to agree with you that we are a Texas. We've got a gun culture in this state, and while it is illegal for an under 18-year-old to purchase a firearm, it is not illegal for an under 18-year-old to possess a firearm. And so why can't? So now what you're saying is, well, you can't buy magazines. You know, my kids, when they turned 12, each of my kids, for their birthday at 12 years old, got a gun. Now, they didn't get to keep it in their bedroom and it was locked up. But why couldn't my son go, if he wanted an extra magazine for when we go to the range, he should be able to go buy a magazine.
He should be able to, a 12-year-old.
I can take this magazine out of my gun right now and still shoot somebody with it without the magazine. It's not the magazine's problem. The magazine isn't the problem. That's not the deadly weapon.
You're still misrepresenting the bill. You keep saying this is a registry. You keep saying that this is something that it's not. I'm just asking you to please just represent the bill for what the bill is. Stop saying it's something
The
else
bill
and
says
it's not.
if you can't buy a gun, you can't buy a magazine.
Where did it say anything about a registry?
How are you going to keep somebody from buying a magazine without a
When you
without a
walk up
background
to the
check?
thing and you say and they ask you for your ID and you say I'm 17, and they're going to say I'm sorry, come back when you're 18. That's what the bill does. It doesn't say, okay, write your name down, let me get your ID, let me get your Social Security, and I'm going to put you in this registry because you just tried to buy a magazine, and I'm going to write all your information down, I'm going to track you. The bill doesn't say that. It says if you're underneath a particular age, you cannot buy a particular magazine. If you can buy the gun, then you should be able to buy the magazine. But you're literally putting words into this bill that is not there, and I think that seems to be.
But he's not a prohibited person. Under 18 is not a prohibited person. He's prohibited from purchasing a firearm.
Sure, and that's what the bill says. That's what the bill says.
Right, which is why we oppose it.
You cannot buy, but you keep saying something else, and now you're conflating all the information you're trying to do. Sir, it just says if you can't buy the gun, you cannot buy the magazine.
And that's why we oppose it.
1 + 1. Thank you. You can oppose it, but stop saying it's a registry.
That's what
Stop saying.
No, look, it's
Thank
a
you, sir.
background check, Mr. Chair. It's a background check.
It's not a background check.
Chairman Canales.
So appreciate your passion.
Yes, sir. And yours too.
And like I told you, I'm a big gun owner myself. But so you mentioned something earlier. You said, you know, it was the criminal that did it, and the criminal is going to take that act, right? So it's the person, not the gun, but the criminal that took the gun. So the gun's inanimate. It needs the criminal, right, to go shoot up a place, right?
Correct.
Are you for arming criminals?
Absolutely not.
Okay, that's exactly.
Criminals are in jail.
No, they're not.
Well, if they're not in jail, they should be. That's the problem.
No, exactly, but so
That's what we said earlier.
that's the goal.
Yes.
But they're not all in jail. So
Right.
so in fact, if I'm a felon, a convicted federal felon,
I'm yelling into this.
if I'm a felon, I'm a convicted federal felon for whatever charge. I'm prohibited from owning a firearm. So that would mean that I'm prohibited from having the bullets and the magazine here. And so not the 18 or 16-year-old here. Take the other classes of all the people that are prohibited. And so I can take your point on the age deal, but you also have to take into account, you just said, I'm not for arming criminals. Well, that's exactly what this does. It says if you're a criminal, a convicted criminal, and you're prohibited from owning a firearm, you can't have the magazines either. And why would you want the magazines or the bullets if you can't have the gun? So you're making it all right for these guys to have all these what I'm telling you is I'm not trying to argue with you. I just want you to see the other side of the coin, that this prevents or prohibits a criminal from amassing bullets and or magazines for a gun he should never have in the first place. And it is 1 and 1 + 2. Is if he's a criminal and he's prohibited from having it, what in the hell are you doing with all the magazines and the bullets? And so I'm not arguing, I just want you to think about it, all right? Thank you.
Yeah, and Representative, this bill does not prevent him from purchasing those. It makes it a crime if he does.
No, apologize. It makes it a crime if he knowingly receives it,
Yep.
buys it,
Yep.
takes it as a gift. So he knows he's prohibited from having the gun.
Right.
And so this basically marries the rest of the pieces together. And so what I'm telling you is your statement before everybody here was, I don't want to arm criminals, but in the same breath you're saying, go ahead, arm them. Give them all the magazines and bullets. You can't run with the hares and bark with the hounds. You got to pick a side.
I side on freedom. Thank you.
I side with criminals not having the weapons like you said in the first place.
Let's
I was in
put 'em in
agreement with
jail.
you in the beginning.
Yeah, let's put them in jail.
Members, any other questions? Yes, Representative Goodwin.
In one part of your testimony, you said that as a result of this bill, you wouldn't be able to buy the magazines.
No, the prohibited person.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify because I heard you say that you wouldn't be able to.
Oh, no, I would be. I'm not a prohibited person. Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions, members?
I apologize if I misspoke on that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And we will mark him as did not testify. The chair will now call C.J. Grissom. Mr. Grissom, we show that you are registered as C.J. Grissom, and you are here on behalf of the Open Carry Texas, and you are in favor of the bill.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is C.J. Grisham. I represent myself and Open Carry Texas in favor of this bill. Just really quick, because I think everything has been covered, but I just want to make it very clear. This is not about storage. This is about asking specifically about what kind of guns, how many guns. This is essentially the creation of a government registry. That's what this is. There's no other reason, none whatsoever, no rational, common sense reason to ask a foster family how many guns they have, what kind of guns they have, what caliber, what's the serial number, unless you're going to create a registry. Because whether you've got 1 gun or 10 guns, the requirement is that you lock up 1 gun or 10 guns. That's it. It doesn't matter how many you have or what they are or what caliber, because you have to lock up a 22 the way you got to lock up a 50 caliber. So it's none of their. I would even argue it's none of their business to even know if they have any guns in the family. But that's not what this bill is about. This bill is just about specifically asking how many, what type, serial numbers, and it prevents that from happening because it is no one's business what types of exactly guns. If the government thinks it's got business to know whether or not I have a gun, period, that's one thing that can be discussed and debated. Obviously, guns should be locked up, especially in foster families where you're taking in children that might not have been raised around firearms and firearm safety. So I understand the requirement to lock them up. This bill strictly addresses intrusive questioning into foster families about specifically, okay, you got pistols. How many pistols? What kind of pistols? What caliber's your pistols? What are your social security number or your serial numbers on the pistols? All right, now what about rifles? What kind of rifles? How many rifles? What caliber rifles? Okay, now shotguns. I mean, how does that in any way, knowing numbers and types, make anyone any safer or anyone any more dangerous? And so with that, Open Carry Texas asks that you report this bill favorably to the full House, and we support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions? Are there any regulations that the state of Texas should place on any families to ask questions about anything when it comes to adopting or fostering children?
They should just make sure that the family that is going to adopt a child is going to take care of that child, is going to nurture that child, is going to raise that child in a loving and safe environment. That's incredibly important.
Is there any particular regulation that the state should have or ask questions so when they're looking at health and safety of the kids, do they ask, do you have electrical outlets? Do they ask, are those electrical outlets covered if you have a child less than so many years old? So
Well,
should they ask those questions or say, do you have any open, do you have knives or that a child can get their hand on? And again, just asking questions of what should the state do to try to make an environment as safe as they possibly can for this vulnerable child.
I think the difference between sort of what you're asking and what this bill does is we see it as a difference between asking whether or not do you keep your firearms locked up. That's a legitimate safety question versus what kind of firearms do you have. That's irrelevant. It doesn't matter what kind of gun I have. If it's locked up, it's locked up. It doesn't matter what it is. So yes, it is incumbent upon a state when they place a child into the custody of adoptive parents or foster parents that they ensure that child's safety. I literally cannot see any conceivable means of keeping a child safe by knowing serial numbers and types of firearms.
So if the state comes in and asks a foster parent, do you have firearms? That's the extent of what the question should be.
I would even argue that's none of their business either. What's their business is, if you have firearms, do you keep them locked up?
Okay. And they say,
Or even better,
and they say,
you're required to lock them up if you
and
have
you're
them.
required to lock them up. And they say yes,
Yeah, that's it.
and we see it. Are you saying that would be problematic?
Absolutely.
Or if I want to see, because you just simply told me that it was locked up, or as the state of Texas that's paying you to keep this precious child in your home, and you gave me your word that you locked up your gun, but I actually did not verify that, and this child got their hand on that gun because I didn't verify it, would the state be liable because they didn't verify whether or not this person had a gun and it had a proper safe, and as well pay them money every day? So the state has no authority or right to verify whether or not a child is being in a safe environment?
Well, Representative Johnson, that's not what this bill is about. This bill is about asking about serial numbers, types of guns. I mean, we can have that debate. I would love to have that debate, but this is about this bill here.
I'm asking a very simple question. It's not a gotcha moment. It's not a, I'm just asking, should the state ask, can I see the gun that you say you have locked up? Because if that's the case, then they're checking how many guns, how much weapon, is it locked up? I'm just simply asking, should they have that right to make sure that this person who will be receiving funds to protect or house and love on this precious child, are they doing their due diligence to make sure that that child is in a safe environment? And yes, we've done our job, or no, we didn't, if in fact this child gets a whole lot of a gun.
Representative Johnson, I do appreciate the question. I don't want to muddy up what the bill author is trying to do here, and by answering that question, it would completely deviate from the purposes of his bill.
Okay. Thank you, sir. You've deviated all day long because you keep saying what the bill should do, and I don't want to talk about what the bill should do.
Well, and I said the bill should manage
back,
lockups.
so
it should maintain lockups, but
we won't deviate anymore as long as you don't deviate anymore. How about that?
I'll make that assumption
All
in
right.
each bill.
Okay. And we'll do the same. Thank you.
Calls C.J. Grisham. We have you down as C.J. Grisham, representing yourself and Open Carry, Texas, testifying for the bill. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Please proceed.
C.J. Grisham on behalf of myself and Open Carry, Texas. I'm not going to reiterate what Ms. Meacha just said to save time, but what I'm going to give you is an anecdote. So in addition to being the founder of Open Carry, Texas, I just graduated law school, just passed the bar. I'm waiting to be sworn in. Wow, that was quick. And so I've had people come to me because they know that I'm going to focus on Second Amendment issues, gun defense, things like that. And I haven't been able to do anything because I'm not a licensed attorney yet. There's a Laredo of all, I never heard of this before, but this individual came to me and we told him we could help him as Open Carry, Texas, but then I just referred him to another attorney that could probably help him. He went to go pay his taxes. Apparently in Laredo, the ISD has its own tax office. I never even knew something like that existed. I thought taxes were just taken out of your property taxes. I didn't know people actually went to an ISD to pay their ISD taxes at a tax office. I don't know. He goes to the tax office and pays his taxes. He's a licensed carry holder. He's openly carrying his holstered pistol and walks out. 2 days later, they literally break his door in. The ISD hamburger SWAT team breaks his door in. He comes home. He's got this all on video, And within 60 seconds, they're surrounding his house. Instead of getting him while he's getting out of his vehicle and going into the house, they wait till he gets into the house, they bust down the door and arrest him for carrying in a prohibited area. The reason this bill is necessary is because they're using this broad interpretation of what is an educational institution. This tax office is not located on school property. It's not located even where the ISD headquarters is. This tax office in Laredo is its own tax office. It's a tax office. It says tax office, and it's United ISD, I think. So there's now an individual in jail because he paid his taxes and was carrying a gun thinking that he wasn't doing anything wrong. And then literally got swatted. I mean, he could have just come out. They could have just said, hey, can you turn yourself in? But I think the ISD police force wanted to make a point there. This bill is important for that very reason. It clarifies what is an educational institution. There is no law. There is only an attorney general's opinion that it's from, I think, 96 or 7 that says that, well, this is how educational institution is defined elsewhere in the code, and therefore it applies to all ISD property. But it's just an attorney general's opinion. So that means there's still ambiguity out there about what constitutes an educational institution and what doesn't. I think the legislature, when they passed these laws about keeping guns out of schools, did not intend for tax offices to be prohibited places, because any other tax office you can go into and it's not a problem. And so we ask that you pass this bill, and hopefully we can get this guy out of jail for what is essentially a miscommunication or misinformation about this law.
Members, any questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Chair, I'll call C.J. Grisham. We have you down as C.J. Grisham, representing yourself in Open Carry, Texas, testifying against the bill. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Thank you,
Proceed.
Mr. Chair. Just at the interest of saving time and not being repetitive, we're just going to adopt what Taramicha said. The only thing I'm going to add is, this 5-year thing after the sentencing, or they get out of jail. Just keep them in jail for 5 more years. If that's the deal, don't let out violent people. If you're afraid that they're going to do something within 5 years, keep them in jail for longer. Domestic violence abusers should stay in jail and rot in jail for 5 years longer. But once they're out, they should have served their time. And if we're still afraid, then that means we have a justice system problem and that we're not properly dealing with domestic abusers if we have to continue to create these kinds of punishments. But just in the interest of time, that's all I got to say.
Vice Chair Jones.
Thank you. That it is great. I think we're on the same page on something. And I'm ecstatic about that, because what you're saying is that when a person does the crime, they do their time, and then when they get out, all of the other stuff is wiped away. No more records, no more, can pull somebody's background check. We don't need to check and see if they have, criminal history. We don't need to do none of that. That's what you're saying right now.
What I'm saying is we either have to accept that the justice system works or it doesn't.
I'm asking you, we in
once
agreement?
somebody serves their time, we are in agreement. Once somebody serves their time, they should have their rights reinstated.
And no more criminal records.
Exactly. I'm all for that.
All for that. So
Yeah. And make that time that they're serving
I'm with you. There we go.
punishable.
I knew we can be on the same page. We're going to write a bill, you and I together. No more background checks for anybody who gets out of jail. And whatever they did, they served their time, and they got out, and now it's time to go back to society.
One of the biggest problems of recidivism, Chairman, is that these people get out of jail, they serve their time, and they can't integrate into society because they have all these barriers.
Now, I will ask you this. I was told long ago that sometimes a tiger don't change his stripes. A person that commits an act of violence demonstrates that they have a tenacity or an inclination or an affinity for violence and may do it again. Would you agree? Not agree?
I don't think that's, as a blanket, I don't agree. I do agree that there are some people, being a combat veteran, I've been violent. That doesn't mean I'm always going to be violent. I think some people are able to be rehabilitated, some are not.
So if a punk beats up his girlfriend just because he's a punk, and gets convicted, do you think he would have a tendency or inclination to be violent against that woman again?
Well, I think if we put him into prison in a situation in which that person doesn't get a lavish life, he's actually being punished, living a terrible existence as opposed to this sort of existence where they get cable TV and education and all this other stuff. You know, it should be a punishment. And when they get out, if we are afraid that someone is always going to be violent once they're violent, then our laws should reflect that, okay, you beat up your girlfriend, your boyfriend, whoever, then you're never getting out of jail. I'm okay with that. If the idea is that a violent person will always be violent, then we always keep them behind bars.
But crimes have a duration of time.
You can fix that.
But in this instance, which we're not going to fix the entire criminal justice system, when someone goes to jail now, and because we have an overpopulation of prisons already, with an underpopulation of guards watching them, so it makes it very difficult. But we're locking people up for the most mundane and frivolous of things.
And I agree with you on that too,
So
Chairman.
at the end of the day, how do we handle right now this person who had to serve time for beating a individual, and when they get out, the question is, how do we protect the individual? Do we put an opportunity for that individual to have a gun, that this violent person that potentially will go back and do the same violent thing again?
Chairman, I think the issue that you're alliterating here is we are admitting that we're sending people to jail for no other reason than a vacation for a number of years, and that we haven't done anything to rehabilitate that individual while they're in jail. If they are still a threat to society, why are we even letting them out? That's the problem. That's the problem. We solve that problem, we solve the violence problem.
Okay, well, we're not going to solve that problem, so we still have this problem. So the problem that I'm saying to you, regardless of what you and I think in respect to the crime that this person did, what we know is that this person is going to get out.
Yep.
Now, there is not any rehabilitation going on
Maybe.
in the prison system. You already said it. That's why the recidivism is so high. So then he gets out. Does this person who is getting out pose a threat to the individual that he just beat?
It is our position that once someone serves their time, then they should have their rights reinstated. And if we are agreeing that these people are still too dangerous for society, then we need to fix the sentencing laws.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Members, any questions? Thank you, sir. Chair now calls Tisha Betty. Or Bedi.